Hey demigods, mortals, and monsters, it's your friendly neighborhood demigod lover, here to discuss episode 6 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which was a ride. The only thought in my brain after watching this episode twice is, wow. I don't know if it's a good wow, or a bad wow, or most likely a good wow with some noticeable bad wow in there, but it's still mostly a good wow, and it hit me in the feels, and it's a ride, and it's a... Suffice it to say, this episode has some moments, so let's go through them. Starting with the beginning dream, I really like the idea of Kronos taking the form of a mean school principal. It really connects to this idea of blending the mortal world and the godly world, and as I discussed in my reviews of episodes 4 and 5, I think that's really important. The form that this being from the magical world is taking in his conversation with a demigod reflects who he really is. It portrays him in a position of power compared to demigods that just works so well. And once again, considering that the Percy Jackson story was made in large part for kids with learning disabilities, having the main villain take the form of an unsympathetic school principal is masterful blending. Plus, it kind of reminds me of a dream that Percy had in the book that begins with him in a classroom taking a test that he hasn't studied for while tied to a chair. The idea is to portray him feeling trapped and helpless. And then Thalia shows up, because of course she does. But the point is, this is just an amazing blend of the demigod world and the real world, and I applaud it. Considering Grover's relationship with animals, watching him stick his head out the window like a dog was so funny to me. As for the Iris message with Luke, the instant worry on his face when he sees Percy and Annabeth hit me in the feels. It just looks so genuine. I don't even know what I'm gonna do in season 5. It's interesting how Luke mentioned that the cabins were starting to take sides and prepare for war. I would have liked to actually see that happening. Without strictly having to stick to Percy's point of view like the books did, we could see some of what's happening back at camp. I think that would be a really great opportunity to not only tell a fun little mini story, but also introduce a lot of our favorite side characters. Luke calling Percy and Annabeth an old married couple, and the look on his face was absolutely gold. Pinning Clarice as the Lightning Thief was an interesting twist, and I wonder if newcomers to the series will be fooled by it. Plus, it adds some interesting potential to Clarice and Ares' interactions in season 2. Grover complimenting the animals was so sweet and precious. I love how he gave them a satyr's blessing, and then when it came to the people, he was just like,
oh, them.
Like, just a round of applause for that. Now, in regards to the Lotus Casino, I know a lot of people were hoping for early 2000s music, but, counterpoint. Nah, the series wasn't solely written for early 2000s kids, it was written for everybody. There's nothing about it that can't occur in the 2010s or 2020s. Now, I do think that the Lotus Hotel could have been made to look a little bit more over the top, and I would have liked to see more of it, but I also get that they can't blow their entire budget on this one scene, so meh. And with Percy calling Annabeth Wise Girl, we now have both of our official nicknames. Grover being targeted by the comment about not eating anything was also really funny to me. Now, I don't really like Annabeth's explanation of Luke's past because I feel like it was just too detailed and they revealed too much too early on. They definitely could have afforded to be a lot more vague here. I mean, they revealed like at least half of Luke's backstory already, and it's just too early. You're taking away a lot of the punch from season 5, and I know that there's no guarantee that season 5 will even happen, but there's really no point in revealing all this now. Think of it this way: if season 5 does happen, you've taken something away from it. If season 5 doesn't happen, then mentioning Luke's mom is as good as pointless because we never actually get to meet her or explore Luke's backstory further. You're not reeling people in, you're not piquing their curiosity about Luke's past. I feel like just a vague mention would have pumped up the book fans a lot more. I'm not saying they can't add stuff to Luke's backstory or how it's discovered in season 5. Considering the changes that they've already made, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if they decided to take that path. But the books are the core of the story. They're what you build on. And now it feels like there's nothing from the books to really reveal in terms of Luke's backstory. A similar thing goes for the scene with Hermes, although I will cut that one some more slack. I still feel like they could have been a little bit vaguer and just kind of had Hermes be dismissive, but it does still add something to have him reveal his history with Luke earlier on. It helps contextualize Percy's relationship with his father and shows a clear parallel between Percy and Luke. Hermes' face when Luke came up was wow. It was a good wow. It was a gut punch wow. Also, the mixture of anger and sadness on his face worked amazingly. His voice could have cracked a little less because I can't really imagine the gods getting that emotional, but still good.
And it wasn't just awful for Luke.
Speaking of emotional, him reminding Percy of his past sure hit hard, but Annabeth taking her hand away and saying she doesn't need any help remembering hit harder. Now, in regards to Hermes saying that the gods are all just doing the best they can, no, I don't like that. I really don't feel like that's in line with how the gods are supposed to be from the book. It's true that they do care and are very bad at expressing it due to the whole being a god thing, but they also don't really care that much. This just feels like too soft of a portrayal for the gods. They're supposed to be terrible. They need to be willing to do terrible things to their own family. Having Hermes say it is one thing, but having him say it in the context of speaking for the other gods in addition to himself was bad. In the book, an important part of Percy's character development, and actually an important part of a lot of demigods' character developments, is learning to reconcile how little the gods care while also appreciating the moments of kindness that they do have. Having Hermes talk about parenting also just didn't work for me, because the gods aren't parents. They do basically nothing for demigods, that's the idea. I just don't feel like the series can play out the same way if the gods care so obviously and so much as they seem to here. Make the gods worse, please and thank you. I haven't really decided how I feel about them revealing the conflict of the entire Percy Jackson series so early and so obviously. On the one hand, if you go too far on that direction, you risk having people actually ignore season 1 as an individual story. On the other hand, this is a really great way to bully Disney into making a season 2. So if that was your intention, Uncle Rick, good on you. Simhadri's acting when Grover started to become forgetful was awesome, and the music underscoring it was on point.
Wait, I was here with...
I'm a little confused as to why Ares said he didn't get involved, only to leave them a note to help them and let Annabeth take his keys, but also tried to delay them so that they could only complete their quest after a war has already started. But he says he doesn't get involved because he doesn't want them to get hurt. Did he have a change of heart when it was already too late? Was he trying to do this subtly so that the other gods wouldn't judge him? What's happening? Why is he helping them, and why is he helping them after the deadline? However, on that topic, I do have to admit that the music / sound effect, I can't really tell which it is, of Hermes checking his watch was amazing. It was just very intense, and it definitely gave off the aura of being lost in time. And I gotta love Percy's reaction to Annabeth stealing Hermes' keys.
Exactly. Wait, what?
I mean, really, why is Percy's dialogue so freaking good? Now, the idea of pumping lotus fruit into the air is interesting. I do prefer the book model where it was just the place itself that captivated people, but the air doing it is pretty similar in principle and still conveys the same message. Plus, it's still much smarter than that which shall not be named. Percy forgetting Grover naturally made me kinda mad at him. I know it's not his fault or anything, but excuse me, sir, backtrack on what you just said right now. Watching Grover play a headset game in what he previously referred to as the most unnatural place in the world hurt. It's just so unlike him that it hurts to watch. I love how excited he gets when Percy says that he and Annabeth are Grover's best friends. I know it's the lotus fruit talking, but I think there's a small part of him there that's the real Grover, and he's going, oh, I have best friends? And yeah, Percy reassuring Grover after he worried that it was his fault they were late was the best. This is just such a powerful moment of friendship between them. The Lotus Hotel appealing to Grover's desire to save the wilderness and him feeling like he'd be the one to actually do it, that was a lot. Call me stupid, but that does kind of remind me of the feeling you get when you play video games for too long and get carried away. Now, for obvious reasons, I adore how Hermes addressed his letter to the dumb kids, and they were all just like, yeah. I laughed so hard at that. It's a little weird that when it came to driving the car, Percy and Annabeth immediately looked at the guy who has hooves instead of feet to do it. Now, a 12-year-old desperately trying and desperately failing to drive a car and like completely banging it up in the process feels so Percy Jackson. I know it never actually happened in the series, but it gives off such a strong Percy Jackson vibe. I also liked how Percy was like, my fault, that was me, after he crashed the car. Like, who else's fault would it be? I also want to add that as soon as Percy started driving smoothly, I knew he was gonna crash again. I freaking called it. I was like, he's gonna crash, and then I like the flute playing when Grover calls Percy and Annabeth his best friends. I think it's easy to forget what's important when you're alone. It can easily be added to the infinitely long list of fandom quotes we contain in our vault. The Percy Jackson fandom definitely has a vault somewhere, don't debate me on this. I don't really get why the deadline to return the bolt had to pass, or as I wrote it in my notes, I don't get why the timer had to go off. It does add something by showing how far Percy has come, that he's willing to continue with this quest even though he doesn't have to, but trying to stop this war after it started just feels like too much for season 1. Now, I like the Naiad comparing Percy to his dad and remarking how similar they are, but once again they went too far in terms of how much Poseidon cares about Percy for the aforementioned explained reasons. What I think they should have done is, instead of having the deadline pass, have something come up with Poseidon, like some responsibility as king of the seas, or sea creatures aren't getting along, I don't know. Something happens and he can't meet with Percy, so he has the Naiad pass on a message, and then instead of confronting whatever just happened at the Lotus Hotel, Percy has to confront the fact that he's not at the top of his dad's priorities. And I feel like that would be a lot more powerful and line up a lot better with the books. But I digress. Now about this quote.
What belongs to the sea can always return.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Chris McCarroll, I think you dropped something. Now, I was kind of surprised at the 4 pearls. I wonder what's gonna happen with that. In the original story, an important plot point was that Percy went all this way to save his mother only to have to leave without her. And I don't feel like the Lightning Thief would be the same without it. So it's unclear what they're gonna do in this regard, but I hope they keep that same plot point. I do somewhat have faith due to the hold fast line that was included in the preview, but we're gonna have to see. With that, I suppose I should conclude this review of Zebras in Las Vegas. Overall, this episode was really good. It hit me in the feels, and it really had some amazing moments. And while there were some things that I don't think should have been included, or included this early on, it was still an amazing ride overall. I'll see you all next time. Until then, get ready to see the underworld. Bye! Man, I really need to stop filming these videos at 12 a.m., but like, when else am I supposed to do it? Man, I really hope I don't sound sick.